Goldeneye 007 for the original Nintendo 64. It's safe to say that it's a cultural icon. Who doesn't know about Goldeneye? Based on the movie of the same name, it's a first-person shooter where you play as James Bond to stop the Goldeneye satellite. It basically does everything the movie does beat for beat. You have the dam, the bungee jump, the facility, the escape scene, the jungle, and it does a pretty good job recreating the sets. The dam mission might as well be ripped straight from the movie. Actually, the movie starts with James Bond running on top of the dam, which means everything in the dam level was created for the game, and yeah, I could see all of that existing in the movie, even if you don't see it. So, how did this game become iconic? Well, it's really fun. And not to mention the cheat codes like Big Head Mode. Yeah, this game has cheat codes. You unlock them by doing very specific stuff like either beating a level on a certain difficulty, or under a certain amount of time. I'm pretty sure this was the game that popularized them. Oh, and I guess the multiplayer. 4-player split screen, a staple of the N64. Gather up 3 friends, and as long as no one picks that Rob Scalley in our job, more often than not, you're gonna have a good time. I don't have anyone to play with, believe it or not, but the gameplay is okay. The shooting is fine and fun. You just go around and press the fire button and kill people. Just make sure not to get hit because you don't regen health here, which is why you could pick up body armor. But man, do these controls only work on... Wait, what console did this come out on? Oh, the original Nintendo 64 controller. Who was this designed for? Aliens? I never thought I would have had to jump into a vat of nuclear waste just to be able to use a controller. Granted, it did give us an analog stick for analog movement about a year before PlayStation did, but what sane person looked at this and thought, yeah, that's the future right there? The lack of a second analog stick always meant moving in most first-person shooter games was going to be pretty awkward. Tank controls are a pain. Strafing is assigned to the left and right C buttons instead of the analog stick. Why is it like this instead of the other way around is something I will never get. And it makes it awkward to play on anything that's not the original Nintendo 64 controller, like on Nintendo Switch Online, where they didn't even bother to update the controls. And on top of that, aiming is reversed. It's the R button to aim and ZL to shoot. And on top of that, there's inverted controls, making this a chore to play. And I wouldn't say it's the controller's fault because other games like Winback have aged much better. But man, do these controls not age well. Luckily, now I'm going to show you a little trick here. Don't tell anyone I told you this. If you have a PC, you can unlock this game's full potential by using a very specific piece of hardware to get mouse and keyboard support. And let me tell you, once you use this, there's no going back to a controller. Fluid movement, proper aiming, widescreen support, and 60 frames per second. It makes the game way better. So, moving on from the controls, the level design in this game is pretty good. The first few levels are the ones I remember the most because I've never really gone past Bunker. Don't ask why, I just stopped playing every time without fail. None of them are too long either. You should get through them in a pretty good amount of time. Granted, you know what you're doing and where to go. Well, the levels start off pretty solid. Some of them can get pretty confusing later on, particularly Statue. This one I could just not get. It took me forever because of how confusing it is, and what doesn't help is that it's set at night. So on top of everything looking the same, you can't see. Dam, facility, and runway are the easiest because you just simply run to the end. Surface is a bit more complex. You have to destroy some silos and then find the exit. And then on runway, you just need to find some keys and get to the plane and the level is done. Of course, the higher you go in difficulty, the more objectives that will be added, which gives you more stuff to do, which allows for more exploration. And then there's the escort missions, the bane of every 90s kid's existence. For some reason, I didn't have that much trouble with these. Of course, I did kind of rush ahead. The main problem stems with Natalia not really following you well, running in front of gunfire, and overall just being too slow, and yeah, I can see that. She got lost a lot for me. Besides that, the game follows the movie pretty well. The story is told through text, no voice acting. The face models are alright though, but in the age of Red Dead Redemption 2s and Modern Warfare, I have no idea how this would have looked in the 90s. Did it look realistic? Goofy? I don't know, the only thing I know is that they look pretty alright, but every set piece from the movie is here. Every fight from the movie, mostly. The nightclub portion of the movie is cut out, probably due to limitations. Other than that, it's all here. So yeah, GoldenEye is one of those games that will probably be around for a pretty long time. Just even look at the speedrunning community. It's huge, and it's pretty impressive, so it's filled with stuff that I would never be able to do. It's one of those things that has kept this game alive. They made movement look way easier and fluid than it actually is, and it almost died because a guy liked looking down. Other than that, this wasn't my introduction into GoldenEye, and it wasn't through the movie either. It was through the 2010 remake on the Wii, or more like reimagining. It covers stuff from both the N64 game and movie. You know, the first few missions are even pulled right from the N64. Damn is the first level, even going so far as to use the layout and camera work. I could imagine this being really cool for someone who grew up on the N64 version. It's basically a one-for-one remake with better visuals and atmosphere. And then when it's time to go down the tunnel, in the original, the level ends shortly after, but here, it keeps going. It's expanded a lot. And the bungee scene is here too. So, one of the main things you may notice is that this is Daniel Craig Bond instead of Pierce Brosnan Bond, and he does an okay job. He delivers all his lines in a monotone way, like he just phoned it in. Definitely not his best work. His delivery at the end of No for me is pretty flat too, and it kind of just ruins it. To be fair, the tone and actions of both scenes are pretty different from each other, so I guess you can't really fault him on that, but it still comes across pretty flat. So the developers did this because they wanted to modernize the story. So apparently, according to them, this is what GoldenEye would have looked like if it came out in 2010 instead of 1995. So naturally, the story is a bit different. When GoldenEye released in 1995, it was the first James Bond movie to come out after the collapse of the Soviet Union, so they had to do something different and unique. So the bungee jump at the beginning of the movie was a pretty good start for this new era of James Bond. Then later on, they pull an M. Night Shyamalan on you, because you think the main villain is going to be some random Joe Schmo, but it's actually your friend Alex who faked his death at the beginning of the movie. His motives in the movie are pretty deep and hard-hitting. He's the son of a Lienz Cossack, which, quick history lesson here, are Ukrainians and Russians that sided with Nazi Germany in the Second World War to fight against the Soviet Union, and near the end of the war, fled to Western Europe, where they were sent back and headed over to the Soviets by the British, where they were then either sent to the Gulag or executed. So in the aftermath of this, Alex's family survived, but his dad killed both himself and his mom because he couldn't live with the shame of it. This scene and reveal in the movie is acted out and played really good. It's one of the better parts of this movie. The way Sean Bean delivers his lines and the lack of music in this scene really immerses and engrosses you into the story. So this is personal not just for James Bond, but also Alec. This was a new and uncharted territory for James Bond. It had never been so personal before. Alec and James are basically mirrors of each other. Both are orphans, both wear tuxedos, and both were 00 agents, but they're fighting on different sides. And Alec even calls him James instead of Mr. Bond like every other villain before him. And they do a really good job of dissecting James Bond as a character. This is one of those movies you should definitely see if you haven't already. So, what does the game do?
Look at the last 10 years. The wars, the financial meltdown. You thought you were protecting Queen and country, but it's all about the bankers and their bonuses.
In other words,
Money!
Wow, what a way to take a complex villain and botch him. The side of his face isn't even scarred, so the name Janice doesn't even make sense here. Well, this sucks. Luckily, the game is better in everything else. It's slightly different from the N64 version. For one, there's regenerative health now instead of the health bar body armor system, but you can play on 007 Classic to restore it. And then the 2010 version does stuff the original didn't do. You have the nightclub mission, as well as a weapons expo mission, the mission where the scientists get massacred, and the tank mission. And they also do things that are pretty similar to each other, like going back to back after playing through N64 version. I could definitely see how they modernized everything. While it's not for one-on-one, you can still tell it's GoldenEye and what's supposed to be what, just expanded. I think it's safe to say that the levels are way bigger here. And then there's stuff in the original that the remake didn't do. There's no street mission where you're shot at by rockets. I think that one was replaced by the tank one, so it's alright. And then there's no escort missions, which is pretty good. And then there was no ruins or pyramids to get the golden gun, but the golden gun is in multiplayer. And then there's no mission where you have to force Boris to do stuff for you. Actually, Boris isn't even in the game at all, not even a cameo in the final level, which is weird since he was a big part of Alex's plan in the movie. And then there's no cheat codes. You know, you think they would have added that considering that was a big part of the original game. You know, GoldenEye just doesn't feel complete without its cheat codes. So, you know, which one you prefer depends on you. The original is more of an action run and gun shooter through and through, while the one on Wii, you can still do action, but it's not as fun. You know, at its core, it's just kind of like any other shooter out there on the Wii, but you can actually do stealth and takedowns in this game, which is how I'm pretty sure you're supposed to play this game. It's actually the best way to play this game. You are a spy after all. And then there's also segments in the game where you breach rooms and everything slows down, just like what Call of Duty was doing at this time. It's also important to note that this was published by Activision, but despite that, as a 12-year-old, I was obsessed with this game. I played this all the time, especially the multiplayer. I played this a lot and remember unlocking quite a bit of stuff. But with no one playing this anymore, I can't actually check any of that. Not even my rank, which that sucks. But you can still do multiplayer because 4-player split screen returns with mostly every playable character from the original returning, including Oddjob. But this time, he isn't doing his best Yuki Tsunoda impression, he's Esteban Ocon. And yeah, I remember me and my cousins having a lot of fun playing multiplayer, especially the slappies only mode. There's something about slapping the enemy to death and the noise that accompanied cracked this up. So back to the single player, my favorite level would definitely have to be Jungle. There's quite a few different branching paths you can take to progress and get to the end, which is always pretty cool. Then it's followed by the nightclub mission. I don't know why, there's just something about it. So your playing options with GoldenEye on the Wii, you can either use a Wii Remote and Nunchuck, Classic Controller Pro, or GameCube controller, but none of these controllers have a clickable analog stick. So melee is mapped to a face button. That's weird. But I prefer to play this with the Wii Remote just for the motion controls. It's more precise and you could shake the nunchuck to melee, so it feels a bit more natural. Everything else like reloading and throwing grenades, that one's kinda weird though. And then also in the game, to shake up the monotony of shooting everything, some objectives require you to hack stuff or take pictures with your phone, because apparently that's something you can do. There's nothing really much else to it. James Wan gets his phone out, you press the A button, and then he either takes a picture or scans something, and then that's it. The level where this is most useful is the jungle level, because there's a bunch of turrets you could hack. You can actually do a large part of this mission without actually firing your gun. So with the success of GoldenEye on the Wii, they re-released it as GoldenEye Reloaded on the PS3 and Xbox 360 a few years later. So it felt even more like Call of Duty. There's not much to say about it though. The only thing that's different is that they added a few challenges you could do. The 4-player split screen is there, and then there's a few enhanced visuals. Other than that, it's still the 2010 GoldenEye, just on PS3 and Xbox 360. So when it comes to the original and the remake, you really can't compare these two games because while they share a name, they're pretty different. One's more of a run and gun with missions that aren't too long, and then the other is a hybrid between stealth and action, with the missions being a bit longer and bigger, like around 20 minutes bigger. So really just up to you which one you prefer. Neither of them are that long either, both taking around maybe 3 to 3.5 hours or so, but both still offer a pretty good and fun time. But also, I don't see GoldenEye on the Wii having an active speedrunning community.